Actually, it's been proven in laboratory tests that nobody in the world smokes. Nobody smokes. Only the cigarette smokes. The person is the sucker, that's all. But they do the very same thing to sell beer. They want you to think beer has something to do with sports. Almost all sporting events are advertised by beer companies. They always get some big old football player. He's holding his can of Bud Dummer. Or Bud Stupid. They call it Budweiser, but it don't make him any wiser, that's for sure. He's got his Bud Dummer, Miller Low Life, or Dead Dog, whatever it is. He says, man, you drink this stuff and you'll be a football player. Yeah, right. Bible says you drink that stuff and you will wreck your life. Who hath woe? They that tarry long at the wine. Bible says don't even look at it when it gets fermented. Proverbs talks about that. Habakkuk said, woe to him that giveth his neighbor drink. One kid said, what's the matter, Mr. Hovind? Don't you like beer? I said, I don't know. I've never tasted it. I'm 48 years old, never had a drop in my life. Well, I had NyQuil a few times. And he said, how do you know you won't like it if you don't try it? I said, that's a brilliant way to live. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever laid your head under a semi-truck? How do you know you won't like it if you don't try it? You don't have to try everything to figure out it's bad for you, okay? There's other ways to learn. Don't fall for that propaganda. How do you know you won't like it? But this mixing of the good and the bad together is exactly what's going on in our public school science textbooks. Now, folks, there's an awful lot of good science in the books. I like science. I taught it for 15 years. I even have a PhD in education. It stands for post-hole digger. I got one. And there's a lot of good science in the books, and there are many good teachers in the school system. My brother led me to the Lord. He's in his 33rd year teaching public school. My mom retired from teaching public school. There are many good teachers in the school system. I'm not against schools. I'm not against teachers. And I'm not against science. But I'm against poison. And there is some poison mixed in the books. That's what I'm against, not the science. I'll show you some. Here's a first grade textbook. You tell the kids in first grade, Earth has changed much since its formation 4.5 billion years ago. Well, now hold on just a minute. Is the Earth 4.5 billion years old? No, but if you tell that to a first grader, he's going to believe you. First graders believe everything you tell them. They believe bananas are moldy spider legs. I did. And then tell them again in second grade. Since its formation 4.5 billion years ago, Earth has changed. Down at the bottom it says, life too has evolved on Earth. Now this word evolved is a very tricky word. It has 6 different meanings. And here's how the kids get confused every time. If you're going to get into a discussion on evolution, or especially if you're going to get into a debate on evolution, be sure you define what you're talking about. That's how you win the debate in the first few minutes. Define what you mean. See, the first part of evolution would have to be cosmic evolution. That would be the Big Bang. Did you know there is no evidence for that at all? Secondly, we'd have to have chemical evolution. If the Big Bang theory is true and it produced hydrogen and helium, how did we get all these different elements? The elements would have to evolve from the hydrogen and helium. Nobody's ever seen that happen. Thirdly, we'd have to have stellar evolution. The stars would have to form. Did you know nobody's ever seen a star forming? We see stars blow up once in a while. It's called a nova or a supernova, but that is the opposite of evolution. Why don't we see one forming? One professor said, now, Hovind, you're so stupid. We figured in the laboratory that if 20 stars explode near each other, it'll produce enough energy to make a brand new star. I said, well, that's brilliant. You have to lose 20 to gain 1. I said, you ought to run for Congress. You could help those guys borrow their way out of debt. First place, nobody's ever seen this happen. It's purely theoretical. Okay, they assume it could happen, and it's never been observed. It's just purely imagination if they want to believe in that stuff. It's not science. All we see is the opposite of this, but stars would have to form. And there's enough stars out there right now that everybody on Earth can personally own 2 trillion of them to yourself. Plenty to go around. Fourthly, we would have to have organic evolution. How did life get started from non-living material? There is no evidence that this can happen at all. We cover lots more on that, how they did not make life in the laboratory, on our videotape number 4, where we deal with 20-some lies in the textbooks out of our blue series of tapes. Fifthly, we would have to have macroevolution. That's where one animal changes to a different kind of animal. Not a different species, but a different kind. No one's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog. But the evolutionist has to believe that the dog came from a rock, if you go back far enough in time. And it happens slowly, of course. Unless you're from Harvard, then it happened quickly. Sixthly, we would have microevolution. This is where animals change within the same kind. Oh, now this one happens a lot. I don't like the word microevolution. I think it's a confusing term. We ought to just call it a variation, but they call it that, so we're kind of stuck with it. The first 5 definitions are religious. Only number 6 is really scientific. So they're going to give kids examples of number 6, and there are billions of those, and try to make them believe that that proves the other 5. And that's how they're winning the argument, folks. Okay, anyway, back to the story. This textbook shows the kids, shows the teachers, that they should stress that the earth is billions of years old. Make sure the kids believe this. I'm a little old-fashioned. I think in science class we ought to be teaching science. You know, things that we can observe and test and demonstrate. Things like the first law of thermodynamics, which tells us matter cannot be created or destroyed. Well, since everything is made out of matter and it can't be created or destroyed, only changed, how did the world get here? We're here, you know. So that leaves only 2 choices. Somebody made the world, or the world made itself. There's no other choice. Well, there's a few out there on the lunatic fringe who will tell you, we're not really here at all. We just think we're here. Okay, you can forget about those folks. We're here. So either somebody made the world, like the Bible says, God created the heaven and the earth, or the world made itself, like the humanists believe. It's just self-existing and not created. Well, if nobody created it, how did it get here? The devil knew this was going to be hard to get folks to believe, so he thought and he thought and he thought, and one day he came up with the Big Bang Theory. How many have ever heard of the Big Bang Theory before? I was on an airplane years ago flying from Dallas to San Francisco, the land of the fruits and the flakes. And I happened to sit right next to a professor from Berkeley University. I don't know if you folks down here in San Diego have ever heard of Berkeley or not, but Berkeley is not a Bible college. So here I was sitting on the airplane about that far away from this guy, and we started talking about creation and evolution. Everybody I sit by on the airplane wants to talk about that, so I talk about it with him. He said he believed in evolution. I said, yes, sir, I figured that. You have to teach at Berkeley. I said, tell me, sir, if you believe in evolution, how did the world get here? He said, it came from the Big Bang. I said, wow, I'd like to hear about this. He said, you're a science teacher and you've never heard of the Big Bang? I said, oh, yes, sir, I've heard a lot about the Big Bang. And I believe in the Big Bang, but my Big Bang is a lot different than yours. You tell me about your Big Bang, and then I'll tell you about my Big Bang. And so the professor started off on one of those answers that looked like it came straight from the textbook. He said, well, Mr. Hovind, I believe about 18 to 20 billion years ago, oh, that's a long time, folks, all the matter in the universe. That's a lot of stuff. Hey, did you know the word universe comes from 2 Latin words? Uni, which means single, and verse means a spoken sentence. We live in a universe, a single spoken sentence. You see, God said, let there be. Now that'll preach, man. There's a sermon in there somewhere, all right? All the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. What? All the matter in the universe was squished into a dot smaller than a period on a page. Wow. That's one crowded dot. And heavy, too. Who held that thing up anyway? Hey, boys and girls, it ain't the last time it happened, nor the first. This textbook says someday all of the matter and energy will once again be packed into a small area, no bigger than the period at the end of this sentence. Then another Big Bang will occur. It happens every 80 to 100 billion years. So you can forget about global warming. We're going to get squished. Global squishing. Call your senator, pass a law quick, you know. Prevent global squishing. Now this textbook author was brilliant. I could not believe how smart this guy was. He said, boys and girls, nothing really means nothing. You have to be at least that smart to write a book. He said not only matter and energy would disappear, but also space and time. However, physicists theorize that from the state of nothingness, The universe began in a gigantic explosion. What? Yes, boys and girls, you see, nothing exploded, and here we are. Who could ask for anything more, you know? See, the Big Bang idea started with a guy named Latimer. He said the thing that exploded was a few light years in diameter. Well, at the minimum, that would be 2, so that's about 12 trillion miles in diameter. Later, they said, oh, no, it wasn't near that big. By 1965, they said it was only 275 million miles in diameter. Then they shrank it and said it's only 71 million miles. They shrank it again to 54,000 miles. Then in 1983, they really shrank it. They said it was a trillionth the diameter of a proton. And now they're saying nothing at all exploded.